Today I have a lot of exciting stuff to go over with you, starting with newly revealed Starship news that you don't want to miss. Then we'll go over a list of future missions that includes Crew Dragon, Cargo Dragon, Starlink, and what's this? Falcon Heavy. And then we'll conclude with today's honorable mention. Exciting things, guys, let's get to it. I'm Kevbo, and this is SpaceX in the News. Alright, a lot of news dropped today and yesterday, but before we get to that, let's take it back. Last weekend, Starship SN1 was prepping for its static fire by first performing a pressure test. So on Friday night, SpaceX filled both methane and LOX tanks with liquid nitrogen, but the structure failed and SN1 met its demise. I released an episode about this on Monday, so I'll put a link in the corner if you're not caught up. Elon responded that because of this mishap, they are stripping SN2 down so they can retest the weld that failed. The weld that attaches the thrust puck to the lower LOX dome, first with water, then at cryo, and Elon even later posted pictures of their efforts to construct that lower portion of Starship. Well, while I was finishing up the script for today's episode, that completed test tank rolled across my screen during Lab Padre's livestream, and it made it to the launch site, where it was strapped down to its test stand. Now, the road you just saw the tank riding on was actually scheduled to be closed a few hours later at 2 p.m. local time. So it looks like SpaceX got a little bit of a head start. When exactly they're going to pressure test this thing with water, we're just not sure of at the moment. My guess is either later tonight or tomorrow. Last weekend, Eric Berger, who's a writer for Ars Technica, was invited back to Boca Chica by Elon Musk to visit the Starship facilities. And what Eric had to write about concerning his interview with Elon was quite fascinating, really. His article is full of solid information and also fairly lengthy. So I won't be going over everything he had to say about his experience, but like everything else, I'll put a link to his article in the description so you can read it yourself. I highly recommend that you do. Eric's article begins with those hiring events SpaceX held in Boca Chica last month. Well, apparently those came about after Elon held a midnight meeting with his team down there, asking them why things weren't getting done as fast as he wanted them to which his engineers responded that they were in desperate need for a lot more workers. I want to add here that those of you who are familiar with Elon's insane work ethic and strong leadership abilities, it really comes as no surprise that he wanted more out of his employees. But anyway, so Elon told his engineers to hire more people, but to make sure that they are high caliber individuals and not incompetent brother-in-laws. And he reminded them that their reputations were on the line for whomever they brought into the SpaceX team. When those hiring events were over and all was said and done, SpaceX added 252 people to the Boca Chica Starship team, doubling the worker population. And SpaceX may still be looking to hire more people. One of my own patrons shot me an email a couple days ago, and his son, who attended one of the hiring events, was just given a position. So my congratulations goes out to him. So Eric's article continues on to the destructive test of SN1 that occurred on last Friday night. Apparently, SN1 was never destined to fly. Whether it was going to be the rocket to make that first 20-click flight, or if that was going to be reserved for SN2, was a question everyone had on their mind before this mishap. But now we have that answer. The plan for SN1, had it survive the pressure test, was to then strap a single Raptor engine onto it and then fire up the sucker. Then, if everything looked green, they may have strapped 2 additional Raptors onto it for a second static test, but probably not, says Eric in his article. By this time, the Starship engineers were already looking closer at SN2, which was already outpacing its predecessor. The day after the explosion, Eric was brought to Boca Chica where Elon opened up to him about the previous night's situation, and it turns out Elon wasn't briefed by anyone on his team about the concerns they were feeling about the thrust puck and the welding before testing SN1. I guess Elon's not a fan of the thrust puck, calling it a dumb design that was badly built and badly checked. Had he been told that there were concerns, he would have told them to hold. In fact, he told them that from now on, they should treat Starship like their baby, which means don't put your baby on the launch pad unless all necessary risks are mitigated. Building Starship is challenging, but Elon wants to build a Starship a week by the end of the year, then eventually one Starship every 3 days. In order to get there, the Boca team will have to build a Starship factory. Elon wants an assembly line flowing through the construction site, so parts will flow through tent after tent until they reach the high bay, ready for final stacking. Currently, SpaceX can construct 2 barrels, also known as 301 stainless steel rings, per day, aiming to reach 4 a day in the near future. The first giant white tent currently holds propellant domes, or bulkheads, for SN2 and SN3. That's right, they've already started on the next Starship. The process to build them takes about a week, but Musk has challenged his engineers to find ways to build better and faster. So the engineers built a dome welding tool called a knuckle seamer, which they put to work in the second tent. They also built a custom X-ray machine so imperfections in the welds could be spotted. Musk said that Mk1 didn't really explode because of pressure. It failed because they failed to build a production line. Mark 1 didn't have Elon's undivided attention due to the Tesla issues that were going on at the time. But now that Tesla is in a good spot, Elon says he's been camped out in Boca Chica. Now, if you're wondering what I've been wondering this whole time, what about worker burnout? Elon's got it covered. He's using a system learned from his Tesla Model 3 production days. Employees work 3 12-hour days and then have a 4-day weekend. Then they'll work 4 12-hour shifts with a 3-day weekend. So with 4 shifts going on, the Boca Chica team can operate non-stop. SpaceX even provides free meals every few hours. Elon is working toward making that 20-click flight happen before the end of the spring, and then hopefully orbital flights later this year with either SN5 or 6. But that would require the Super Heavy booster. So what's up with that? Well, Elon isn't really worried about it. If they have the assembly line for Starship already good to go, the hard part is done. Elon's reasoning is that Super Heavy is already similar to Starship. It only has longer tanks, a more complicated thrust dome, but it lacks a heat shield. Again, this only covers a small portion of what Eric wrote about, so make sure you check out his Ars Technica link in the description below. In other news, a parts manufacturer for SpaceX confirmed that they experienced a data breach. Visser Precision, a custom parts manufacturer based out of Denver, Colorado, made a brief statement this week that they were a recent target of a hack attack. The file encrypting malware, called Dopplerpaymer, is a type of ransomware that exfiltrates company data, then threatened to publish those stolen files if the ransom was not paid, which apparently it did. Its website was first discovered by a security firm that located files stolen from Visser, which included customer names Tesla, SpaceX, Boeing, and Lockheed Martin. And the website says a lot more stolen files are waiting to be published. Before we move on to look at upcoming missions, I want to share this picture that was sent to me by a fan of the channel, Michael Parker. He captured this image of a Falcon 9 booster arriving at Space Center Houston, where it will be put on display. Thanks, Mike. If you yourself ever happen to cross paths with SpaceX, please feel free to send whatever you capture my way. If it's relevant enough, I'd be more than happy to feature what you send me in one of my episodes. Alright, SpaceX has officially booked another Falcon Heavy launch, and this time with NASA as a customer. The Heavy launch vehicle will take NASA's Psyche to a metal asteroid between Mars and Jupiter to help humanity better understand the formation of our solar system's planets. It is scheduled to lift off in July of 2022. SpaceX also tweeted that Crew Dragon's Demo 2 mission is currently in final preparations for its flight to the International Space Station, and also that they have teamed up with Axiom Space to take 3 private passengers to the station for a 10-day mission in the latter half of next year. But concerning the very near future, the next Starlink launch is scheduled for March 14th, and yesterday SpaceX opened up media accreditation for the 7th Starlink mission, which will launch no earlier than April. Tonight, however, is SpaceX's next launch, CRS-20, a resupply mission to the ISS. This week, they successfully performed a static fire test for the booster, which previously flew on the last resupply mission, CRS-19. So that's neato. And the Dragon capsule itself previously flew on CRS-10 and 16. It will be the 3rd time that a Dragon flew 3 missions. The launch is currently expected to happen at 11:50 p.m. Eastern Time, and of course, I will be covering it right here on my channel. Join me. I'd also like to take a second to announce that rocket photographer Greg Scott and I have teamed up to cover future SpaceX launches. So keep an eye out on the SpaceX-centric website for his amazing pictures. They'll be updated on the regular. And now it's time for today's honorable mention. Yesterday, NASA revealed the official name for the Mars 2020 rover, and they held a ceremony to do so.
And the name of this mission is Perseverance!
They also introduced the 7th grader who came up with the name, Alexander Mather from Springfield, Virginia. And almost immediately, the rover was awarded the nickname Percy by the community. A somewhat of a twin to Curiosity, the 2020 rover's mission is to seek ancient signs of life in the rock record of Mars, also preserve some samples in containers along its route for potential future sample return missions, and prepare the way for future human exploration. To do so, the rover contains 7 instruments, 23 cameras, a robotic arm, and state-of-the-art mobility and sampling systems. It took approximately 8 years and over 3,000 people to build this beast. The rocket itself is scheduled to launch on July 17th of this year, and the rover is expected to touch down almost exactly 7 months later on February 18th, 2021 in the Martian crater Jezero. But I think the coolest thing about this mission is that it will include a Mars helicopter drone. Yeah. And if you want to learn more about that, I gave it its own honorable mention in a very early episode. Check out the link in the corner if you want to learn more about that. One of my all-time favorite documentaries is called The Ultimate Mars Challenge by PBS. It follows the design process of the Curiosity rover and the landing sequence that was used to place it on the Martian surface. I highly recommend you check it out as well. Perseverance itself will land in the same hope on a rope kind of manner, but with a little bit more sophistication included. Well, that's all I have for you guys today. I really appreciate you stopping by. These videos are made possible by the generosity of my eccentric members and patrons. Love you guys. If you haven't signed up yet yourself, you can check out the links below. For those of you strapped for cash, it's cool. I get it. I live paycheck to paycheck for most of my life. I'd be just as happy if you hit that subscribe button and gave this video a... Y'all have a phenomenal weekend, and don't forget, I'll see you right back here tonight for the CRS-20 launch. Until that time, Godspeed.